This is Woodwords the podcast, a production of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild, with host Kevin Thomas. Here's your host, Kevin Thomas.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the first episode of the next generation of Woodwords the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Thomas. Joining me today are my co-hosts. We have Mike Jones and Grace Ambrose. We will be discussing a wide range of topics having to do with woodworking, but today it's our hope that we will inspire, educate, and entertain you with our gift of gab. So if you don't want to miss an episode, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, let us know how we're doing. And if you have any suggested topics, please let us know. And today we're going to be discussing social media and woodworking, which has gotten to be a pretty intense situation nowadays. A lot of people out there. So let's start with Mike. What form of social media do you subscribe to? And
you know, it's interesting. A lot of it started on Facebook, posting pictures, and of course the algorithms will pick that up and they'll feed stuff into your Facebook feed that is relevant to your interest, and then it segued from there into Instagram, and then of course YouTube. And I probably use YouTube more than anything, largely because there's a lot of how-tos on there. There's a couple people that I really enjoy their stuff. They seem to deep dive into topics that are of interest to me, exhibiting new tools. It's one of the things about the social media, there seems to be a lot of influencers, and the more subscribers that they get, the more they get sponsored by companies, and then they're talking about their tools. Stumpy Nubs is the one that comes immediately to mind. James Hamilton is the host of Stumpy Nubs, and he's been doing it since the early 2000s, as I recall. Yeah. And he covers a lot of ground. He covers a lot of stuff, and he's actually heads up, owns an active commercial shop.
yes. How about you, Grace?
Well, so I'm a lot younger than Mike and Kevin, so I have a lot more social media, probably like experience and accounts in my past. You know, I've tried probably every social media network, not everyone, but you know, a lot over the years. I would say when it comes to woodworking, Instagram is kind of the only network that I'm using for inspiration or instruction in my own kind of personal woodworking practice. And I follow more. It's interesting to hear, like, I've never heard of Stumpy Nubs, and the people that I follow on Instagram, I would say I don't find a ton of product placement in like that sort of realm of being an influencer or whatever. I follow a lot of female woodworkers, Aspen Golan, Sarah Watlington, Nancy Hiller, Megan Fitzpatrick from Lost Art Press. Like, those are all people who I follow them because I feel like they use really plain language and make woodworking feel very accessible, which in a lot of ways also feels like not trying to sell me something or tell me about a new tool. And there's nothing wrong. I love new tools. I love getting like new things to play around with in my shop or in my house or the projects I'm working on. But I'm also interested in kind of these, like, learning through social media more about people's like philosophies of woodworking and how maybe you can approach the work that you're doing with a more limited set of resources and tools. And I would actually say, like, I'm a big YouTuber when it comes to things like working on I have like a antique Mazda truck and I'm remodeling a house, and YouTube is my go-to place for when I'm trying to figure out, chase something down in the truck, or, you know, figure out the best way to install this particular hex tile or whatever that I'm getting for my house. But for woodworking, I feel like, because something, you know, Kevin's always saying in class, like, there's 100 different ways to do something in woodworking or whatever. And I feel like that maybe is, I'm less, when I'm online looking for woodworking inspiration, it's less looking for a how-to or how to solve a problem, because I'm limited by my own limited skills in the shop, and more looking for like, ooh, that's a thing that I would really like to make someday. How could I understand how this other person made it, and then apply like what I know to that same project? So I would say it's less instructional for me than perhaps other areas of my interest when it comes to social media.
How about you, Kevin? Are you following anybody?
Oh, I follow both Nancy and Megan. Since I've met them both, it's nice to follow somebody that you've met and had dealings with, and they're both witty, and plain spoken would be one way of putting it, but not afraid to take a salty tone if they need to.
Totally.
Especially Megan. But you know, I followed several Windsor chair makers, like I'm trying to think of his name, a fellow down in Tennessee, Pennington, Greg Pennington. He's really makes some awesome chairs, and one of these days I hope to be able to go down and take a class with him, but I get inspiration from them, and that's where we're headed nowadays. We don't really learn the how-to right away. We get inspired, and that's a lot of what we do here at the Guild. So.
Yeah, I follow Peter Galbert, another Windsor chair maker, on Instagram, and I feel like some of the best people to follow on Instagram are people that also have an active teaching practice too. So they're people who are teaching classes. I also follow a lot of shops that are like Port Townsend School of Woodworking, or Fireweed Wood Shop is up in Minneapolis, or Allied Workshop. These are all shops that have some similarities with what we do here at the Guild, but also, and teach a lot of classes too. And I think it's really interesting, I think Kevin, you would probably say this too, to look and see what other kinds of classes are being taught other places and by who, and how they have their programs structured, so we can think about how we might implement that like in the training program here at the Guild. And I think if you're following people who have a teaching practice, they are trying to share not just like the final product, which of course can be inspirational to look at, but also how they got there, and you know, the roadblocks or the things they learned, or just like little tips. I feel like that's the main thing for social media, is taking me these like little nuggets of information, rather than like, I'm gonna follow this project along from start to finish. That's maybe more what I would go to like Fine Woodworking or a magazine for, like, okay, this is my cut list and my plans and all of that. But social media, definitely more kind of these like momentary bursts of inspiration or information.
I know Lost Art Press has Chris Swartz and Megan Fitzpatrick. They offer the classes, and I've taken 3 classes with Chris in the past. So to me, that's always a good source. But what effect do you think social media has had in general on woodworking?
I think there's a tremendous effect. I was just sitting here reflecting, you know, as Grace was talking about, you know, drawing little bits and pieces of information off of these influencers. I noticed Stumpy Nubs as an example. I'll keep referring back to James. He's done a lot of instructional videos, and you could subscribe or you can pay for the how-tos that will take you from A to Z on building a project. Similar guys like Wood Whisperer, Echo Peak Design, guy out of Montana that has an active commercial shop, and he's making furniture largely out of construction grade lumber, and very successful business there. There's a local company here in Kansas City, Unruh.
Unruh, yeah.
They do a lot of trendy furniture being built out of hem fir and things you can buy at the local big box retailer. But guys like, and I like to follow some of the really high-end stuff. One of our former members here who's now in North Carolina, I follow her. I just drew a blank.
I know who you're talking about.
Oh my goodness, my apologies. Oh well.
We'll put it in
Meredith Hart.
in post.
Meredith-
Okay,
Meredith
yeah,
Hart. Meredith and her dad joined the guild years ago, and Meredith had just come out of getting her master's degree, I believe, in architecture, and realized after she got her master's degree that architecture wasn't really feeding the beast, and she ended up enrolling in and got accepted into the Bennett Street School. And her story starts there. Truly, as soon as she got done there, she moved towards a studio environment in North Carolina and has been making not only period furniture work, but she's doing some other self-designed,
Yes.
high-end designs. And then we've got another one of our guild members, Les Hastings, down in Wichita, and Les is probably the best woodworker I know personally. Les has spent years working in the commercial shop environment doing high-end custom furniture and cabinetry. So I like following Les. He's slowed down quite a bit due to
Retirement.
and health issues that prevent him from getting into the shop as often as he would like. But there's my list of who I follow is pretty extensive. I don't often seek inspiration as much as I do just wanting to see how they're doing a particular thing. And a lot of my social influence type people come from all over the world. I follow Waters and Ackland, Vernon Chandley out of England. I follow
There's some good woodworkers
Straza.
in Australia.
Yeah, I've got to follow a guy out of Tasmania, Nick Randall.
Yep.
He does some remarkable stuff, and a lot of his stuff is bent wood. It's almost incorporating boat building into furniture building. So he does some really remarkable forms. The old adage they taught us in architecture was form follows function, and that couldn't be further from the truth with his work, because his form has nothing to do with the function of the piece. It has everything to do with the actual beauty of the piece. And when you incorporate curves, all kinds of rectilinear shapes into a furniture piece, that makes it instantly one-off. It's not something you're going to reproduce on a regular basis. And then I turn around and I really enjoy following Jim Tolpin, who he co-wrote the book with. Again, we've had him here. Again, here goes my memory. But he actually
George Williams.
No, it's not George Williams. Blank. Anyway, they co-wrote the book by hand and eye. I believe we even have a copy of it in the library. And it's remarkable because everything that we build is based on proportions and ratios, and it goes back to the golden rule, and they cover that in the book. Jim is a prolific follower of boat building and caravan building.
I think
gypsy
he got
caravans.
I think if I remember right from what I've read, he got his start in boat building.
Yes, he did, and that influences a lot of what he does. He does a lot of scale miniature boats, but his one of his areas of interest is gypsy caravans.
Yeah,
And that's always pretty interesting. And then I follow other people like Texas Heritage Woodworking, which I've got one of their waxed canvas
apron.
shop aprons.
Yeah.
the list is so extensive. Jonathan Katz-Moses is one that I really like watching, because Jonathan is one of these guys that, while he has sponsors for his web work, he likes to do product analysis, product investigation, testing. I got turned on to the new 3M product. It's a 5-inch sanding disc that uses ceramic coating instead of grit that they've always used for years, and sandpaper. And he went so far as actually to send 20 different brands of sandpaper to a testing lab in California, where they attached it to a computer arm, and the computer arm, under program like a CNC, sanded wood, and then they extracted the sawdust off of the wood and measured how much sawdust it extracted and how long the belt or the pad lasted. Fascinating comparison, and it was completely objective analysis, and determined that the number one best performing product out there was this Cubitron extract by 3M, and it's a relatively new product. And it's a mesh backing that allows your sander, because I use a Festool Rodex with a dust evacuator on it. So you get virtually no sawdust buildup on your pads, which makes them last longer. Plus they're ceramic. So instead of carbide, now ceramic has become the darling, and so far I've had tremendous success using the Cubitron extract. Wouldn't have known about it had it not been for Jonathan Katz-Moses doing that. And he does a lot of that type of stuff where he breaks it down and analyzes various products that are available out there. And I don't know that he has any, I'm sure he has sponsors. A lot of these YouTube and Instagram influencers have sponsors because of the sheer volume of subscribers and people who follow them. I mean, there's a magic number, it's like 10,000 followers. Once you hit that number, you start getting calls from marketing companies or
We're looking for marketing sponsorship here at the Guild. SawStop, we're talking to you. We need some more.
Yeah, if you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, be sure to let us know.
Well, it would be interesting to see how that would morph with this podcast, since we're a community shop, a shared shop, which sets us apart from these single shop or single influencer shops. Wood Whisperer, pulled up everything he had going on in Colorado and moved to St. Louis recently, and hasn't got his shop set up. And he's a guy that I follow because, again, he does a very thorough analysis of different products, comparing products and their performance based on price, performance, quality of manufacturing, so on. He did a great video on analyzing miter gauges for the table saw.
I think as someone who's newer to woodworking, like I became a member of the Guild less than a year ago, which is when I started my woodworking journey in earnest. For me, the sort of community aspect of the Guild is also a little bit of what I'm looking for on social media too, because I'm still trying to figure out what it is that I want to concentrate on more with woodworking. I started taking classes here because I'm remodeling a house, as I mentioned, and I had more experience with sort of construction, which is different, and carpentry, which is different than woodworking, as everyone has made very clear here at the Guild. And trying to think about the things that I wanted to do in my own house and in my own life. But so right now, as I'm figuring out the sort of endless bounds of woodworking, is it building a boat? Is it making a knife? Is it building fine furniture? Is it making toys for your kid? It's all of those things, but what is it that I want to concentrate on? So I think for me, with social media, it's been interesting to cast this kind of very wide net where I'm following people, and I'm also following people who's I'm not going to mention, but whose work I don't particularly like, who I would not, they make, $20,000 live edge slab tables that I would never have in my home ever as long as I live. But I'm interested to see, okay, how is it that you make that? How is it that you've developed this market for this? How is it, what is going into this process? and learning what I can from that. And I think it's also, I think part of when you're trying to figure out what it is that you want to focus on or what it is that you want to work towards, you have to figure out what it is that you don't want to work towards either. And like, that's the great thing about coming to the guild is when you talk to people here, it's like everybody, you ask them, okay, like, well, what is it that, what's your thing in woodworking? And everyone has a different answer. I would say also too, something I haven't mentioned is I do follow a ton of like, vintage furniture reseller accounts, mostly like mid-century Danish and Swedish furniture. And that's something that I think is really inspirational too. It's not necessarily about the making of it, but it's more like, okay, this is a thing. This is actually a very simple form in a lot of ways, but it's very specific and very elegant also in its simplicity. And that's something that I'm very drawn to. And even just like looking at things and then figuring out, okay, here's this thing, if I were going to draw this on a piece of paper now and start to think about how I would change it into a set of plans for myself, I think that that's a really useful sort of node of inspiration for me, just looking at stuff that, realizing that yes, there is this element of creativity here, but also I don't need to reinvent the wheel or start from scratch, and that like classics are the classic for a reason sometimes, and finding out what it is that I like and then thinking about, okay, how can I develop the skills that I need to make those particular kinds of legs, or like what is the joinery here? And a lot of these really high-end furniture resellers have amazing photos of the furniture that they have restored and are reselling, and it's a great, very instructional thing.
Well, and that's also going to be an indication of that level of woodworking brings with it a certain level of expertise, joinery. The Scandinavian furniture builders on a different level, not that it's that much higher, because if you compare what they build to what some of these period furniture makers build, there's no difference in skill sets. It's a completely different method though. Yeah. Completely different methods. They don't use a lot of dovetail joinery. They do a lot of machine work, but the Scandinavians, in particular the Swedes and the Swiss, are all about precision. You know, those guys are dealing in thousands.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing. You look at IKEA furniture from like the 60s and 70s, like old IKEA furniture is actually incredible fine furniture kind of. It was mass produced, yes, but it is this, they're really amazing pieces of furniture. And
I've had some Scandinavian furniture in the past. I had a beautiful office set. It was all knocked down.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's few things that are as pretty as a beautiful credenza and a desk made out of teak. I don't care if it's particle board core. Stuff weighs a light ton, but it was extremely well made, and it endured 4 or 5 moves for our family, and great office furniture that I had. I loved it. And the simplicity of it.
Yeah, it's sort of it's like kind of populist in this way, and it also feels, obviously it's, you know, the simplicity, when you're doing something simple is actually really hard to do it really well most of the time, but also in some ways feels like an accessible kind of thing to work towards for myself, or even just because it's simple enough to understand like how things, you can look at a picture and almost understand how it all goes together or how you got there. But yeah, so social media for me, back to the question, the effect it's had on my woodworking is just sort of helping me figure out what are the next paths that I want to explore, go down, or I feel like this first couple years of this woodworking project for me is going to be about trying out as many different things as possible, even if I don't think like, you know, I took a knife class with Mike. Like, I'm probably not going to make hundreds of knives in my life, but it was really, I will make more knives for sure. It was super interesting, and just like,
well, you find out how simple things can be.
How simple things can be, and then how rewarding it is to kind of master that simplicity and get to like the kind of refined product.
It takes the mystique out of it when you see somebody do it. It doesn't matter what class you take. once you have somebody show you, and I like to think that most woodworkers are visual learners. It's hard to learn woodworking from a book, but it's very easy to learn woodworking from someone walking you through and showing you the steps. Then you repeat the steps. It may not be perfect the first time you do it, but that's what the beginning woodworking class was all about.
Yeah.
You know, who in the hell would have thought you're going to be making a cutting board? And then you jump onto it and find out, oh, this isn't as hard as it looks. I had no idea they were made this way. And then you go on to the next step. It's the same thing with the rough to ready class that we teach. You learn all the basic rudimentary skills necessary to build a box. And then when you find out how simple it is to make a box, it's like,
Oh, I can do that.
I can do that. I can do that. I can't say that social media has had a tremendous influence on what I do. I, like all woodworkers, I'm a visual learner. I like to watch people, how they do things. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's how I'm going to do it, because we also have limitations both in our home shops and here in the guild shop, that there are some machines I'm not sure I would trust them to do some of the things that I know could be done.
Now we're talking about visual. We move on to what do you think of the many YouTube woodworkers? Now I have to admit I've seen a few. Something they'll post the little catchphrase and how to do this, and I'll end up watching them and then I'll end up cringing because I'm surprised the person still has their fingers left. But
yeah, you see some really stupid things. It's unfortunate, but if you've got a phone with a camera, or if you have a decent digital camera, anybody can be a YouTuber.
yeah,
It doesn't necessarily mean that they're an expert if they know what the heck they're doing. But one of the things that, I can't tell you how many times I've seen videos of people using a table saw with gloves on.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, we have a very clear set of rules that govern the safety in this shop. And it's been painstakingly developed by a number of people going way back to our original shop over in Merriam. There are times when maybe wearing a pair of gloves isn't a bad idea. If you're handling rough sawn wood, gloves are pretty nice if you don't want a handful of splinters. But
When you're on the table saw, you don't use them.
right, and you see it happen all the time, or people pushing stock through the blade the wrong way, standing directly behind the stock that they're cutting on the table saw. Until you've experienced a kickback, you have no appreciation for where you're supposed to be standing. Once you have that accident, you'll learn where to stand.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Provided you're
that all
alive.
comes down to like just media literacy in general, like figuring out. It's the same thing when it comes to watching. Another thing, I watch a ton of cooking videos on YouTube, like, and some of those are admittedly more for like the personalities involved than for the cooking techniques.
Right.
But you learn. I mean, something that definitely like I mentioned my truck before. It's like my particular. I have a 1992 Mazda B2200 pickup truck. There's a whole sort of like cult Mazda mini truck community around it on Facebook, on YouTube, and all of that. And you have to sort of sift through the videos to find out like who knows what they're talking about and who is full of shit, basically, when it comes to the. Sorry, Kevin told me not to curse on the podcast. I tried very hard. I made it like half an hour probably.
I think that's admissible,
Right,
don't you?
yeah. That's family friendly and yeah. But it comes down to like, yes, it's a shame if people are like not able to kind of sort through, but that is, I mean, I think that's a problem, not to get like too big on the podcast, but that's like a problem in society that we have right now. People who aren't able to like figure out what they should be listening to and what they shouldn't be.
Right.
And I was curious, Kevin, you wrote like the YouTube woodworkers. Like I was like, I don't know who the YouTube woodworkers are. So I was like, am I missing out on some big YouTube group of
there
people?
are a number of woodworkers on YouTube. Some of the one of the ones that Mike's already mentioned is James Hamilton at Stumpy Nubs.
Stumpy Nubs. That name.
I would
It's working for him, I guess.
I would recommend him.
Okay, all right.
He's good on product analysis, really big on teaching a big proper technique. April Wilkerson.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to admit, when I first looked at one of her videos, because there's a pretty redhead with long red hair. I'm a red-blooded American, partial to redheads. I dated 2 or 3 of them when I was in high school, but
70 years ago.
Jumping off point.
Yeah.
But
Redhead woodworker, I like her.
she's taken things from your position, from being a beginner, and is fairly accomplished at what she does. I mean, it got her a job with Tim Allen, so, and her own TV show on the History Channel.
I've been waiting for the version of the Great British Bake Off that's with woodworking, kind of. Which I don't know why that doesn't.
They've done it.
Yeah.
It's a program called Build It.
Is it good?
I have an issue with that program, only because what you're seeing are the excerpts from hours of footage. You're not seeing the whole thing. The problem with Build It is, in my estimation, is they're having them build something and you've got 4 hours to build it. I'm sorry. When you are rushed, you make lots of mistakes. You also put yourself at risk when you're working under a deadline like that. I know from personal experience, when you're working under a deadline and you're pushing yourself beyond what your skill level should allow for, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
I had reconstructive surgery done on my right thumb because I was in a hurry, I was strapped for time, and I was behind. That's just a bad combination with woodworking equipment. Really bad combination. You have a tendency to skip the steps that you should be taking to keep yourself safe. So that's what bothers me with some of these YouTube woodworkers. They're doing things, and for a beginner, there's someone who doesn't have a lot of experience, who sits there and watch that, then they're influenced by, well,
I can do that in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I can do that.
Well, it's like when you said earlier, you're like, it's hard to learn woodworking from reading a book or something. I kind of like that approach. And again, not to bring it back to my truck, but the Haynes manual that comes with your old vehicle or whatever is actually the best. Kind of, in some ways, it's sometimes it's frustrating. You're like, I don't know if it's supposed to take me 1 minute or 2 hours to get, this gasket in here, or whatever I'm doing. But there isn't that sort of illusion of speed or editing. And
I would agree with you, Grace, because when I was in high school, I actually took auto mechanics at trade school. The Chilton's manual was the Bible.
Yeah.
And I drove a 1952 Chevrolet pickup truck with a 6-cylinder engine in it, an old dry-ice sump 235 Chevy 6. I blew that engine up and had to rebuild a later model 6-cylinder engine to get my truck back on the road. The Chilton's manual was absolutely the how-to. You followed it page by page and it walked you through. You can't do that with woodworking.
right.
Again, as you pointed out earlier, if you ask 5 different people in this shop how to do something, you're going to get 5 different ways to do it. They all probably get you to the end result you're looking for, but everybody has a different way of approaching the problem. And we have got some very, very talented woodworkers in this shop, guys who are very old school in how they do things. And then you've got the mixture of the guys who use shop equipment and the guys who use hand tools. The hand tool guys, they're purists. And I love that about those guys, because they want to attack the problem using hand tools, using old methods.
Well, that's one good thing about these sort of like YouTube channels and stuff too, is documenting these things, not to be like before it's too late, but you want to get this knowledge down and shared with people. I mean, again, last time I mentioned the truck, but it's carbureted. Like there is no one in Kansas City basically that works. When I wanted to tune my carburetor, the advice I got was drive around and find the oldest guy you can find sitting outside the mechanic shop, and he'll help you tune the carb. And that's what I did. And it's just this thing of too, like, but there was also, there's resources on YouTube and stuff like that. But I think documenting some of this in a way that is sort of this like more community aspect for people to see is
that to me
also.
That's the greatest thing about the internet and the YouTube and having access to idea bank or the knowledge bank that exists out there. It's extraordinary how much information there is out there. And they say this, we're in the information age. Well, yeah. And if you want to learn how to do something, it doesn't take you long to find out how to do it. May not be the right way, but at least you're going to get exposed to it.
Well, it's extraordinary to see the people who were making like YouTube videos before there was a culture of YouTube influencers or branded YouTube. People who were literally just documenting something for the hell of it or for their friends or to share with a particular, forum on some message board somewhere.
Well,
it's really cool.
It's before your time, but clear back into the 50s and 60s, they were making industrial training videos. Mm-hmm. It was done on 16 millimeter film, and because I watched some of those films in high school.
Yes.
Remember in high school shop, they had various films on safety?
Oh, yeah.
So that's where it started.
Yeah.
And now you've got thousands, literally tens of thousands of people out there producing YouTube videos in their own home shop, their own garages. I mean, there's guys out there who do nothing but test out products. I watched one today. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was testing how many times you can pull a tape measure out and let go of it and snap it back against the body of the tape measure before the tip blows off of it. He did it 10,000 times.
Oh my God.
And he videotaped the whole thing. Of course, high speed, looping it together in high speed 10,000 times. Who wants to do that?
Who wants to know that?
Exactly. But then on that note, one of the things that bothers me about YouTube woodworkers are the guys who do like product comparisons and then use their platform to run down one product that they don't think is as good as the other two, or the one that is their favorite. So I think there's some bias involved in some of these examinations that bother me, because a product that I really like to use, Odie's oil. A guy did a comparison of the three products that are basically hard wax applied finishes. Odie's, I like it because it's non-toxic. It's not a solvent-based product, and it leaves a magnificent finish. But this guy absolutely ran it down. In fact, the teaser for that particular video had it superimposed in red letters with an arrow pointing down at Odie's oil. Not necessarily, is that what he was trying to convey? And then you watch the video and he did all these different tests and comparisons, and he based that off of their claim that it was waterproof. And he was able to leave a water ring on a piece of wood that he'd finished with Odie's. I don't know that it's true. I don't know that if it was a controlled environment to test it. Somebody like Jonathan Katz-Moses, who actually sends it to a testing lab and has products tested side by side and doesn't run down anybody else's product. He basically displays the facts, breaks it down into how long, and then had a kind of a bar graph showing which ones lasted the longest, which ones lasted the least, and then did a cost comparison. How much is this one going to cost you per sanding pad versus this one? That's good information.
That's good information. I mean, that's actually useful information for a home woodworker.
So it can be used. The YouTube and the social media networks can be used for good purposes. It's also used for advertising. I follow Odie's Oil on Instagram. I follow it all the time. The guy that started Odie's Oil has a commercial shop, and he makes custom tables for people. You know, the $10,000 live edge tables. That's what spurred the development of his product. Was he needed something that he didn't react to because he is allergic to a lot of the solvents, like deathly allergic to it. So he had to create a product that was safe for him to use and produce the kind of results that he was after. It's worth following. I mean, it's worth looking at.
I think that's the one thing we've come up with in social media is it's no longer the individual, just the individual that has a presence. It's companies and so forth. And
oh yeah, companies are paying these influencers to rep their product because it's a great marketing platform. No question, it's a great marketing platform.
So if you've got a company and you need somebody to support your product, give us a call.
The Woodworkers Guild cannot be bought, but we will take some free stuff for sure.
and we've actually had, Odie's is providing us with product to finish the flag cases and the ash urns that we're building for Kansas City Hospice and Palliative Care. So we've had DeWalt sponsors providing us equipment. We've had Woodcraft sponsors us.
Rockler.
Now Rockler. I mean, we've got lots of sponsors that help us out. No question. No question. And we have something to sell them because we've got close to 900 members. That's 900 potential buyers.
Yep.
It's hard not to see the value.
Totally.
I'm going to move on to the last question here because we pretty much covered the fourth one. Have you considered your own presence on a social media platform besides this one?
Absolutely not. When I look at the amount of work it takes to set the camera up, then to sit down and do all the edits, I mean, I know what work goes into us filming our safety videos that we've been doing here. And thank goodness for William Mantilla, one of our members, who doesn't really spend any time here in the shop working. He's got his own shop at home, but he's a videographer. He took classes at Johnson County, so he did all the heavy lifting. He took all of the work that we taped here, then took it home and edited it, put it all together, put the title run on it, did all the background. He even plays the music, the background music that we play for the podcast.
Yeah, he's our theme song.
Yeah.
So
talented guy. But when I look at the amount of work that goes into that, no way I'm interested in doing that. When I'm working on a project, I am completely immersed in it. I have to maintain my focus and what I'm doing with step A to get to step B to get to step C. If I have to interrupt that train of thought with camera angles or close-ups, or no thanks. I have no interest in doing that.
Right, but I like to share the work that I make on social media with like my friends and my family. So not necessarily step by step. I mean, I'm using it. I made the plant stand in class, and then I posted it. I said, the next two people who tell me they want a plant stand, you buy the wood. I got to practice making this plant stand, and I'll make you. I'll make you one.
Great idea.
And there is that sort of dopamine boost you get when
ego gratification.
When my mom's like, oh my God, you made that. Like, and,
I'm so proud.
And I'm like, yeah, this part's screwed up, and this part, but but yeah, I think that is like, a important use of social media also for just like sharing, and also, part of the guild, joining the guild was, like you said, demystifying these. Oh, that's how you make a cutting board. Or like, oh, that's also the same way that this top of this workbench was made, or the butcher block counters in, your kitchen or whatever. So I think also just demystifying it by like all of us normal people, civilians at the guild sharing our work is a great, way to make people feel like it's accessible.
I can say for myself, I started out with Facebook, and the Guild has a Facebook presence, which I started during my time as president a few years ago. We've got both the group and the page. The Facebook group is more of a, share what you've worked, ask questions of other members, a forum. The page is more of what's going on at the Guild. And then I have my own stuff, and Instagram, my handle is the Crooked Hands Wood Shop. So I pretty much work at documenting my journey in woodworking as a sufferer of rheumatoid arthritis, and I also write a blog, but I haven't gotten into YouTube other than this presentation here. So
Kevin's blog is really, really good. I read a lot of it one night. I was like, this is great. I really recommend it.
Kevin's actually a pretty talented writer.
Yeah.
He got his launch into that genre when he submitted an article to Pop Woodworking and got it accepted and published.
Nice.
And that hooked him up with Megan Fitzpatrick,
Yeah.
who at that time was a redhead, wasn't she?
yes.
Okay, all right. This is,
And you have an Instagram. You're Wood Junkie Jones.
Yeah, I do. And it's funny. You touched on it, Grace. It's an ego gratification thing. You're feeding your ego when you post pictures of your work, and everybody's going, "Ooh, oh wow, that's cool. That's really great." There's a certain part of that I'm not sure I like it. But then again, I do.
it brings you back. It's like,
Well, it's almost a drug, an addiction.
Yeah, it's addiction.
You want to go out there and get the strokes. I like the fact that people can see visual representations of my progress through my woodworking journey. I've been doing this level of work before. I mean, woodworking is absolutely a journey through precision and developing technique. And, you as a beginner in woodworking, you're at that starting point. I always love to share the story about Marcel Bredemeyer, one of our members here, who joined many years ago. And Marcel walked in, and having grown up with a father who was an avid woodworker, very accomplished woodworker, she came in here with no woodworking experience. And she was very intrigued and drawn by hand tool woodworking. And I convinced her you needed to learn to make hand-cut dovetails. If that's what you want to do, if you want to do hand tool woodworking, that is a great place to start. Learn how to cut hand-cut dovetails. So she did it. She poured herself into a couple projects in the bench room, and mistake after mistake after mistake. Finally got her dovetails where she was cutting them clean and they were nice and tight. Beautiful work, absolutely beautiful work. And 2-3 years after she did that, she was teaching a class. And that to me is the greater value of what we have here. We've got YouTube. We can go to YouTube. We can go to the different social media platforms. But what happens in here, there's not a person in this shop that I know of that if you went up to them and say, "Would you teach me how to do that?" that they will tell you no. Dave Kratz. Absolutely the number one name that pops into my mind. If you ask Dave how to do something, he will drop everything he's doing and take you by the hand and show you how to do it. And if it takes more than a couple days, he'll be here at the shop to hand carry you, hand serve you, mentor you, do everything necessary to see to it that you get to the end result that you're wanting to get to. Guy's an extraordinary teacher, extraordinary wealth of information and ability that he is all about sharing what he knows, all about it. And that's, to me, one of the primary characteristics of most of the people who join this guild.
If you want to learn a particular technique, if you find that person here, they'll share their information. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're about time to wrap up. I'm going to end with a question for each of you. What's on your bench?
I'm neck deep in a project for a local Catholic parish in Blue Springs, building another ostensorium, similar to what I did for Christ the King 10 years ago. Only this one's a little more complicated. It's actually utilizing a stepper motor and a rotating carousel that is triggered by a code pad that you type in the code on the wall. And it's all solid walnut. It's
You're getting fancy, Mike.
Yeah, very, very. And of course, I'm using both hand work as well as electronic CNC. Spent a good deal of time this week working with Bob Detweiler, doing some CNC work, because the level of precision we need to get for that carousel to work the way it's supposed to work, I wouldn't attempt to do it with any other way other than the CNC. And what better guy to help me with that than Bob Detweiler?
How about you, Grace? What's on your bench?
Well, I'm finishing up those 2 plant stands that I promised my friends. And then I just finished the drawings with a friend who's a cabinet maker for the cabinets I'm going to build with her in my kitchen at my house. So I read Nancy Hiller's book, Kitchen Think. That was, it's an awesome book. That's like, I hate to be such a Nancy Hiller stan or whatever.
But she started what you did.
That book is so badass and really.
She started what you did in those shops in England.
It's a really big project to take on, but I'm doing it with someone who knows what they're doing, and I'm really excited to do it. So, yeah, everything I've been working on recently has been focused around my house, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I've been working on a cradle that I started 11 years ago.
You're going to say that baby is now junior
The
high.
baby is now 12 years old, so. But I had all the pieces in my shop, and I said, well, I really need to get this done, so that's where I'm at. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us for tonight. I hope you enjoyed this. This has been a truly interesting experience for us. We will be back with more topics. We want you to let us know how we did.
Send us your topic ideas, you know.
Let us know if this is your new favorite group of people to watch. But
we'd also be interested in hearing about subject matter. People are interested in hearing about a particular subject. Let us take a deep dive into a subject that we may or may not know anything about.
I was trying to pitch the car talk format to Kevin, where people submit their problems, and I'm like, just hammer it in, and
Anyway, we're at podcast@kcwg.org. So if you have a suggestion, a comment, a question, send it to us, or leave a comment below on the YouTube channel. We'll also see that. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and as always, and I could say for my co-host, thanks for being here. Work safe. Get your sawdust on. Thanks.
It's a wrap.
This has been Woodwords the Podcast, a production of the Kansas City Woodworkers Guild, with host Kevin Thomas and producer Chris McCauley. A special thank you to our guest today, to the Guild's Leadership Committee, and to all of our sponsors. For more information about the Guild, upcoming classes, and events, please visit our website kcwg.org. You can also find us on social media by searching for Kansas City Woodworkers Guild. And remember to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. For more videos, please check out our YouTube channel. If you like this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.